Rain fell heavily over the city, turning the streets into rivers of reflected neon lights. Thunder rolled across the skyline as black clouds swallowed the last traces of evening. Most people had already gone home. But the convoy of black armored SUVs moving through downtown traffic did not slow. 3 vehicles. Tinted windows. Armed guards. Everyone in the city knew what that meant. Valentina Moretti was on the move. Inside the middle car, silence filled the cabin. Valentina sat in the back seat, her long black coat draped around her shoulders. Her dark hair rested loosely against her neck, as she watched the rain slide across the window. She looked calm. Cold. Unbothered. Just like the stories said. But tonight, there was something different about the most feared woman in the city. Her hand rested gently on the large curve of her stomach. 8.5 months pregnant. Even now, the truth felt strange. The Iron Queen. Leader of the most powerful mafia organization in the city. About to become a mother. Across from her sat Luca, her longtime bodyguard. A massive man with a thick scar running down his jaw. He had protected Valentina for nearly a decade. He kept his eyes forward. Because staring at your boss's pregnancy was a good way to lose your job. Or worse. The car slowed as they approached an intersection. Valentina shifted slightly in her seat. Then suddenly, she inhaled sharply. A small kick pressed from inside her stomach. The baby. Valentina placed her hand there instinctively. Another kick followed. Stronger. She smiled faintly. Luca noticed the movement from the corner of his eye. Everything okay, boss? Valentina nodded calmly. Yes. Another kick landed. She exhaled slowly. Well, mostly. Luca allowed himself the smallest smirk. I've seen you walk away from gunfights without a scratch. Valentina raised an eyebrow. I'm still not convinced this one isn't more dangerous. Luca almost laughed. Almost. The convoy slowed again. Bright hospital lights appeared ahead. Valentina sighed. I hate hospitals. Luca nodded. You say that every time. And every time someone forces me to come. Outside, rain pounded against the windshield as the vehicle stopped under the hospital entrance. Bodyguards stepped out immediately, scanning the area. Valentina opened the door carefully. The cold rain hit her face. She stepped out slowly, adjusting her coat over her stomach. Even pregnant, she carried herself with the same dangerous confidence that made grown men fear her name. Her guards formed a circle around her automatically. But someone walked straight through them without hesitation. Dr. Elena Rivera. The only person in the world who wasn't afraid of Valentina Moretti. Elena stood under the hospital lights with her arms crossed, dark hair pulled back tightly. And she looked furious. You're late. Valentina raised an eyebrow. Good evening to you too. You were supposed to be here an hour ago. Valentina shrugged slightly. I run a criminal empire. And you're 8 months pregnant. Elena stepped closer, lowering her voice. You shouldn't be walking around the city at night. Valentina leaned slightly toward her. Are you giving orders to a mafia boss, doctor? Yes. The baby kicked again. Both women froze. Elena's eyes widened. Was that? Another kick landed. Elena placed her hand gently against Valentina's stomach. The baby kicked again immediately. Elena laughed softly. She's already stubborn. Valentina smirked. She gets that from her other mother. For a moment, the terrifying mafia queen looked peaceful. Human. Elena looked up at her. You need to start taking this seriously. Valentina tilted her head. I always take threats seriously. I'm not talking about enemies. Elena gently squeezed her hand. I'm talking about our daughter. Valentina looked down at her stomach. For a brief second, the cold expression she wore around the world softened. I know. But across the city, inside a dark office overlooking the harbor, another man watched surveillance footage from the hospital entrance. Marco De Luca, Valentina's greatest enemy. The man who had tried to kill her more times than anyone could count. One of his men paused the video. The screen showed Valentina stepping out of the car. Her coat moved slightly in the wind, revealing the unmistakable curve of pregnancy. De Luca leaned closer to the screen. His eyes narrowed. Is she? His lieutenant nodded. Yes. Silence filled the room. Then slowly, Marco De Luca smiled. For the first time in 10 years. The Iron Queen had a weakness. And he intended to use it. He turned to his men. Prepare the ambush. Thunder cracked across the city. And somewhere inside the hospital, Valentina Moretti felt another strong kick from the child she would soon bring into the world. She had no idea yet. But a war had already begun. The hospital corridors were quiet except for the soft hum of machines and distant footsteps. Valentina Moretti hated places like this. Hospitals smelled like antiseptic and vulnerability, two things she tried to avoid in her life. Yet here she was, walking slowly beside the only woman who could make the most feared mafia boss in the city behave like a stubborn patient. Dr. Elena Rivera. Elena glanced sideways at Valentina as they walked toward the private examination room. You're limping. Valentina raised an eyebrow. I'm pregnant, Elena. That's not the reason. Valentina gave a quiet sigh. Old injuries. Elena stopped walking. Her dark eyes narrowed. Which one? Valentina shrugged. Take your pick. Elena crossed her arms. Gunshot wound from 2 years ago. Valentina kept walking. Possibly. Knife wound from the harbor fight. Valentina said nothing. Elena sighed deeply. You're impossible. Valentina pushed open the exam room door and stepped inside. I'm alive. Elena followed her in and shut the door. That's not the same thing as being healthy. Valentina sat down on the examination bed slowly, adjusting her coat. Her pregnancy made every movement heavier now. Even sitting down required effort. Elena noticed. Her expression softened slightly. When was the last time you slept more than 4 hours? Valentina thought about it. I don't remember. Elena rubbed her temples. You run a criminal empire. Yes. You attend meetings, deal with violent men, and apparently still get into fights. Sometimes. And you're almost 9 months pregnant. Valentina smiled faintly. When you list it like that, it sounds stressful. Elena glared at her. I'm serious. Valentina watched her quietly for a moment. Then she spoke in a softer voice. You were the one who saved me. Elena froze. The memory came back instantly. 3 years ago. A rainy night much like tonight. Valentina had been rushed into the emergency room covered in blood after a brutal shootout. Most doctors had refused to treat her. Not Elena. Elena remembered looking into Valentina's cold eyes for the first time. The woman everyone called a monster. But when Elena examined her wounds, she saw something else. Pain. Exhaustion. A woman who had survived too much. Elena had stitched her wounds without asking questions. When Valentina finally woke up hours later, the first thing she asked was, "Why didn't you call the police?" Elena simply replied, "Because you needed a doctor." That moment had changed both of their lives. Back in the present, Elena moved closer and began checking Valentina's vitals. "Lie back," she said. Valentina obeyed. Elena lifted the ultrasound scanner and applied gel gently to Valentina's stomach. The baby kicked immediately. Valentina smiled. Impatient already. Elena moved the scanner slowly. A moment later, a rhythmic sound filled the room. Thump thump. Thump thump. Thump thump. The baby's heartbeat. Strong. Fast. Valentina stared at the screen. Even after months, seeing the tiny figure moving inside her still amazed her. Elena studied the monitor carefully. "The baby looks healthy," she said softly. Valentina relaxed slightly. "That's the only thing that matters." Elena looked at her seriously. "No." Valentina glanced at her. "You matter too." The room fell quiet. Valentina wasn't used to hearing those words. People respected her, feared her, obeyed her. But caring about her, that was rare. She reached out and gently took Elena's hand. "After everything I've done, you still worry about me." Elena squeezed her fingers. "Even monsters deserve someone who cares." Valentina laughed quietly. "That's exactly what you told me the night we met." Elena smiled. "I meant it then too." Suddenly, Valentina winced. Her hand tightened on the edge of the bed. Elena's attention snapped back immediately. "What was that?" Valentina exhaled slowly. "Just pressure." Elena frowned. That didn't look like pressure. Another small pain passed through Valentina's stomach. It faded quickly. But Elena noticed everything. "How long has that been happening?" Valentina hesitated. "Today." Elena's expression turned serious. "That could be early contractions." Valentina blinked. "Already? You've been under too much stress." Elena placed a hand gently on her stomach again. "You need to slow down." Valentina sighed. "You know that's not possible." Elena leaned closer. "Valentina, listen to me." Her voice lowered. "If something happens to you or the baby." Valentina interrupted softly. "Nothing will happen." Elena looked unconvinced. Then suddenly, the lights flickered. Both women looked up. A moment later, Elena's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen. Her face went pale. Valentina noticed instantly. "What is it?" Elena slowly turned the phone toward her. Security footage from the hospital entrance appeared on the screen. Black vehicles. Men with weapons. Blocking the exit. Valentina's eyes turned cold immediately. She recognized the symbol on one of the cars. Marco De Luca. Her greatest enemy. The trap had already been set. Valentina slid off the examination bed slowly. Elena grabbed her arm. "You're not going anywhere." Valentina looked at her calmly. "Unfortunately." Her voice turned deadly quiet. "The war just came to us." Outside the hospital, engines roared. Guns were loaded. And the night was about to explode. The hospital hallway suddenly felt much colder. Valentina stood near the examination bed, her hand resting protectively over her stomach while Elena stared at the phone screen. Men with weapons. blocking the hospital exits. Elena's heart began to race. "Tell me that's not what I think it is," she whispered. Valentina's expression had already changed. The softness from moments earlier was gone. In its place was the cold, calculating gaze of the woman who ruled the city's underworld. "That's Marco De Luca," Valentina said quietly. Elena felt a chill run down her spine. "You mean the man who has tried to kill you multiple times?" Valentina nodded once. "Yes." Elena looked down at Valentina's stomach. "You're 8 months pregnant." Valentina reached for her coat. "He won't care." Elena grabbed her arm. "You're not going out there." Valentina turned to her slowly. "Elena." "No." Elena shook her head firmly. "You're staying right here." Valentina sighed. "You don't understand how this works." "I understand that you're about to have a baby." Another sharp pain moved through Valentina's stomach. She inhaled quietly. Elena noticed immediately. Was that another contraction? Valentina didn't answer. That was answer enough. Elena's voice grew softer. "You need to stay calm." Valentina stepped closer to her. "Elena, listen carefully." Outside, the distant sound of engines echoed. Her guards were already responding. This building is about to become a battlefield. Elena's eyes widened. "What?" Valentina took her hand gently. "And I need you somewhere safe." Elena refused to move. "I'm not leaving you." Valentina smiled faintly. "You're stubborn. You married me." The word hung in the air. Married. Even now, saying it out loud felt dangerous. Their relationship had always been hidden. To the world, Elena Rivera was simply Valentina's doctor. But the truth was far deeper. They had fallen in love slowly. Dangerously. 3 years earlier. After the night Elena saved Valentina's life. It began with quiet conversations during late-night checkups. Then dinners. Then long nights talking about a world that existed beyond violence. One night, Valentina kissed her. Elena never walked away after that. Months later, they had secretly married in a small private ceremony. No witnesses except Sofia Moretti, Valentina's sister and second-in-command. And now, they were about to become parents. Elena squeezed Valentina's hand. "I'm not leaving you tonight." Valentina studied her carefully. "You might not have a choice." Just then, the hospital intercom crackled. "Security alert. All staff remain inside your departments." Footsteps echoed in the hallway. Valentina's bodyguards appeared at the door. Luca stepped inside quickly. "Boss." Valentina turned. "How many?" 2 vehicles confirmed outside. "Possibly more." Valentina nodded. "And De Luca?" "Not sure." Valentina thought for a moment. Then she looked back at Elena. "You need to stay in this room." Elena crossed her arms. "I'm not hiding while people try to kill you." Valentina walked closer until they were only inches apart. Her voice softened. "You're not hiding." Her hand moved gently to Elena's cheek. "You're protecting our daughter." Elena's resistance cracked. Another contraction hit Valentina suddenly. Harder this time. Valentina grabbed the edge of the table. Elena immediately supported her. "Sit down." Valentina shook her head. "Not yet." But Elena could already see it. The tension. The pain. Labor was coming. And the worst possible moment. Outside. A gunshot echoed in the distance. Then another. Luca cursed under his breath. They've started shooting. Elena's heart dropped. Valentina reached inside her coat, pulling out a pistol. Elena stared at her. You cannot be serious. Valentina checked the weapon calmly. De Luca wants a war. Another contraction twisted through her stomach. She steadied herself against the table. Even now. Even in pain. Her voice remained calm. He's about to get one. Elena grabbed her arm again. Valentina, please. Valentina looked at her. For a moment, the dangerous Mafia queen disappeared. And Elena saw the woman she loved. If anything happens tonight, Valentina said quietly, you take the baby and disappear. Elena shook her head fiercely. No. Elena. I'm not raising our daughter alone. Valentina looked at her for a long moment. Then she smiled softly. Good. Another gunshot rang through the building. Luca stepped forward urgently. Boss, they are pushing toward the entrance. Valentina's eyes turned cold again. Then let's remind them whose city this is. She stepped toward the door. Elena grabbed her hand one last time. Come back. Valentina leaned forward and kissed her. Slow. Gentle. Then she whispered. I always do. She walked out into the hallway. And seconds later, gunfire exploded outside the hospital. The war had begun. The first gunshot shattered the quiet of the hospital like thunder. Then another. And another. Within seconds the entire building erupted into chaos. Nurses shouted down the hallways. Security alarms began blaring through the corridors. Patients were rushed into rooms as doctors tried to lock down the emergency floor. But outside, the real battle had already begun. Valentina Moretti stepped into the hospital corridor, her long black coat flowing behind her. Her bodyguards moved instantly into formation around her. Luca leaned close. Boss, they've taken the front entrance. Valentina didn't look surprised. How many? Hard to say. At least a dozen. Valentina placed a hand on her stomach. Another small kick from inside. The baby. For a moment she closed her eyes. Not fear. Calculation. Then she opened them again. Cold. Focused. Get Elena somewhere safe, she said. Luca hesitated. Boss. That wasn't a suggestion. Inside the examination room, Elena paced anxiously. She could hear the gunfire echoing through the building now. Her heart pounded harder with every shot. She knew Valentina. She knew exactly what the Mafia queen was doing right now. Walking straight toward danger. The door suddenly opened. Two of Valentina's guards stepped inside. Dr. Rivera, one said quickly. We need to move you. Elena shook her head immediately. I'm not leaving. The boss ordered. I heard the order. Elena grabbed her coat. But I'm a doctor. She looked toward the hallway. If people are getting shot, I'm needed. The guards exchanged uncertain looks. Because the truth was, Valentina would be furious. But they also knew something else. No one argued with Elena Rivera either. Meanwhile, near the hospital entrance, bullets slammed into the marble walls as Valentina's soldiers returned fire. The glass doors at the front of the hospital had already shattered. Gunmen from De Luca's organization pushed inside. Valentina crouched behind a pillar with Luca. De Luca came personally, she asked. Doesn't look like it. Valentina smiled slightly. Coward. Another round of gunfire erupted. Luca peeked around the pillar and fired 2 shots. One of DeLuca's men collapsed immediately. Valentina moved carefully to the edge of cover. Even now, even heavily pregnant, she handled the pistol with perfect control. 1 breath. 1 shot. Another enemy dropped. But suddenly, a sharp pain shot through her stomach. Valentina inhaled sharply. Her hand gripped the pillar. Luca noticed instantly. "Boss?" Valentina didn't answer. Another wave of pain rolled through her body. Stronger. Longer. Her breathing slowed. She knew exactly what it was. Contractions. Labor. And it was getting worse. Luca stared at her. "No, no way." Valentina exhaled slowly. Not ideal timing. Another gunshot hit the wall above them. Fragments of marble rained down. Luca swore under his breath. "We need to get you out of here." Valentina shook her head. "If I leave now, they'll chase us." Another contraction hit. Harder this time. She bent slightly forward. Even Luca looked worried now. "Boss." Valentina steadied herself. Then she looked toward the shattered hospital entrance. Her voice turned icy. "Finish them." Her soldiers moved instantly. Gunfire erupted again across the lobby. Within seconds, several of DeLuca's men were down. The remaining attackers began retreating. But just as things seemed to calm, a loud crash echoed outside. Everyone turned toward the sound. A massive black truck smashed through the hospital's front barricade. The vehicle screeched to a stop. Doors flew open. More armed men poured out. Luca cursed. "That's not good." Valentina's eyes narrowed. Smoke grenades suddenly rolled across the lobby floor. Gray smoke filled the air instantly. Visibility dropped to almost nothing. "Fall back," one of her guards shouted. But the smoke spread too fast. Valentina grabbed Luca's arm. "Stay close." Another contraction ripped through her stomach. This one nearly dropped her to her knees. Her breathing grew heavier. The baby was coming. And now, she could barely see through the thick smoke. Suddenly, strong hands grabbed her from behind. Valentina swung her elbow instantly, striking someone hard. But more hands grabbed her arms. A voice spoke through the smoke. Low. Amused. "Well, look at that." Valentina froze. She knew that voice. Marco DeLuca stepped forward slowly as the smoke thinned. Tall. Cold smile. Expensive suit untouched by the chaos. His eyes dropped to Valentina's stomach. He chuckled. The Iron Queen, about to give birth. Valentina glared at him. "You're a dead man." DeLuca laughed. "Maybe." He gestured to his men. "But tonight, you're coming with me." Another contraction hit Valentina hard. She clenched her teeth. DeLuca's smile widened. "Oh my." He leaned closer. "Are you in labor?" Valentina didn't answer. But her silence confirmed it. DeLuca looked delighted. This night just became much more interesting. Behind him, Elena suddenly burst through the smoke. "Valentina." DeLuca turned slowly. His smile grew even wider. "Well, well." He looked between them. "The doctor too." He nodded to his men. "Take them both." Within seconds, armed men surrounded them. Valentina tried to fight. But another brutal contraction dropped her to one knee. Elena rushed forward, catching her. De Luca watched with fascination. The most feared woman in the city. On her knees. About to give birth. He smiled coldly. Let's go. Outside, engines roared. The truck doors slammed shut. And as the vehicles sped away into the stormy night, the Iron Queen of the city disappeared. Kidnapped. While in labor. And the war was only just beginning. The warehouse smelled of dust, oil, and fear. Dim lights flickered overhead as Valentina Moretti was forced to the floor, her hands pressed against her stomach. Each movement was agony. The Iron Queen, feared by every rival, unstoppable, untouchable, was now vulnerable in the most human way possible. Her breaths came in sharp, shallow bursts. Contractions racked her body, stronger and closer together than she had ever experienced. Elena, she whispered, clutching her lover's arm. Elena Rivera knelt beside her, her medical bag barely containing the supplies she had snatched from the hospital in the chaos. I've got you, Elena said firmly, gripping Valentina's hand. You're going to get through this. Valentina laughed, though it was little more than a strangled gasp. Get through this, while Marco De Luca's men are waiting outside to kill me. Elena's dark eyes hardened. We'll handle them if they come in. Right now, you survive and the baby survives. A contraction doubled Valentina over. Sweat ran down her temple as she gritted her teeth. She gasped. I can't, it's too strong. You can, Elena said, voice calm but urgent. Listen to me. Breathe, in through your nose, out through your mouth. Valentina did as told, counting the seconds through the pain, leaning on Elena for support. Every nerve in her body screamed. Her usually unshakable composure was gone, replaced by raw vulnerability. Outside the warehouse, the storm raged. The faint roar of engines in the distance hinted at the approaching search, Moretti soldiers combing the city for their queen. Inside, Elena worked quickly. She cleaned what little surface she could find, prepared sterile scissors, and kept one hand on Valentina's forehead while the other monitored her vitals. You're strong, Elena whispered. Strong enough to get through this, just like you fought through everything else. Valentina shook her head weakly. I'm not, like anything else right now. Another contraction hit, and Valentina groaned. Her hands dug into Elena's shoulders. Pain, fear, exhaustion, it all mingled in a storm that mirrored the one outside. You're doing perfectly, Elena assured her. Just a little longer. Minutes dragged like hours. The baby's head had begun to descend, and Valentina's strength was failing. You need to push, Elena instructed softly but firmly. 1, 2, 3. Valentina screamed with effort, every ounce of her power concentrated into the movement. The warehouse walls echoed with the sound of her exertion. Finally, a cry. A tiny, perfect, powerful cry that pierced the tension like sunlight through storm clouds. Elena caught the newborn immediately, pressing her against her chest. The baby's body trembled, but the sound, strong, alive, confirmed what they had prayed for. Valentina collapsed back, chest heaving, sweat dripping from her face. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she looked at the baby. She's beautiful, Valentina whispered, her voice breaking. Elena smiled, exhaustion etched in her features. She is. She's our daughter. Valentina reached out weakly, trembling, and touched the baby's tiny hand. For the first time in months, her entire world narrowed down to this small, fragile life in her arms. A sound at the door, a faint creak, made them both freeze. Elena's hand went to her pistol. Valentina, still shaking from labor, sat upright with terrifying calm. They are coming, Valentina said quietly, voice like ice. But no one touches her. Outside, the city stirred. Somewhere in the night, Moretti soldiers were closing in, unaware of the chaos in the warehouse. Inside, a mother and her newborn were about to face the most dangerous night of their lives, and the Iron Queen would do whatever it took to protect her family. Valentina looked at Elena. "Promise me." "Anything," Elena whispered. Valentina's eyes, still filled with pain and fire, met hers. "Promise me, nothing ever hurts her like they tried to hurt me." "I promise," Elena said. Another crash sounded outside, the first sign that DeLuca's men were still near. Valentina smiled weakly through the exhaustion and blood. "Then it begins." The city didn't know it yet, but a storm had arrived. From the shadows of the Moretti mansion, Sophia Moretti slammed her fist into the long mahogany table. Her green eyes burned with fury. "They took her," she growled. "Our queen, kidnapped, while she's pregnant." The room fell silent. Every soldier, every lieutenant, every handpicked enforcer knew the stakes. "She's not alone," one man whispered. "Elena's with her." Sophia's eyes narrowed. "Then it's worse. DeLuca knows about the child. And if he has her, he'll use her as leverage. We can't wait." Within the hour, Moretti soldiers poured into the streets. Black SUVs raced through the rain-soaked avenues. Phones rang constantly. Every corner of the city felt the tremor of the Queen's wrath. At the same time, inside the warehouse, Valentina lay on the floor, her body still weak from labor. Elena held their newborn daughter tightly, rocking her gently. Valentina's eyes scanned the room. The baby stirred, tiny fists curling. "They are coming," she said quietly. "Sophia will find us." Elena nodded, gripping the small pistol at her side. "They are not coming fast enough for my taste." Outside, engines roared, tires splashed through flooded streets. The Moretti army moved like shadows, leaving destruction in their wake. Rival gangs had no chance to interfere. The Iron Queen's network had already shut down every possible escape route. Back in the warehouse, DeLuca's men paced nervously. Marco DeLuca himself watched the baby with a smirk, confident that fear would paralyze Valentina. But fear didn't exist in the Iron Queen. Valentina pushed herself upright, ignoring the ache in her muscles. Elena watched in awe as she took command again, even weakened by childbirth. "Listen carefully," Valentina said, her voice quiet but dangerous. "We make a plan, and when they arrive, we hit back. Hard." Another shot rang outside. One of DeLuca's men glanced at the door nervously. "Boss," he said. "They are here." Valentina's eyes narrowed. She looked at Elena, holding the baby close. "Time to remind them," she said, "why no one ever crosses the Morettis." Within moments, the doors burst open. A flash of light, a flurry of movement, and the warehouse became a battlefield. Valentina, though exhausted, moved with precision. Every shot fired, every movement, was calculated. Elena stayed behind her, protecting the baby, occasionally shooting to cover Valentina's flanks. And outside, Sophia's forces finally arrived. They stormed the perimeter, cutting off escape routes. DeLuca realized too late that he had underestimated the Queen. Valentina's eyes gleamed with fury, determination, and an unshakable maternal instinct. "I said no one hurts my family," she whispered. And in that instant, the war for the city truly began. Gunfire shattered the night. Valentina Moretti moved like a shadow, her newborn daughter safe in Elena's arms behind a makeshift barricade of crates and barrels. The air was thick with smoke and the acrid smell of gunpowder. DeLuca's men swarmed the warehouse, but Valentina's soldiers had arrived just in time. Shots rang out, bodies fell, and chaos reigned. Valentina wiped sweat and blood from her brow, her body still weak from labor. Pain shot through her abdomen with every movement, but she didn't falter. Not now. Not ever. One of DeLuca's lieutenants charged at her, gun raised. Valentina pivoted, grabbed a heavy wrench, and slammed it into his side. He collapsed with a scream. "Elena," she called. Elena ducked behind crates, holding the baby tightly. "I'm fine. Keep fighting." Valentina smiled grimly. "Not enough. Time to end this." She moved forward, each step deliberate, her eyes locked on Marco DeLuca himself. He stood near the far end of the warehouse, watching the fight unfold like a predator. His expensive suit was immaculate, his expression calm, almost amused. "You're persistent," he said, voice echoing through the chaos. Valentina didn't respond with words. She raised her pistol, aimed carefully, and fired. The bullet grazed his shoulder, and he recoiled. DeLuca laughed. "I expected more." Valentina's body tensed. Another contraction hit, and she staggered slightly, clutching her side. Pain radiated through her, but her mind was clear. The baby, Elena, and her empire depended on her. "You've hurt enough people," she hissed, stepping forward again. DeLuca drew his gun. "Now it's your turn to pay." The sound of the city's approaching reinforcements, Moretti soldiers, grew louder outside. The tide was shifting, but inside, Valentina and DeLuca faced each other like the war was personal. Shots rang out, and one of DeLuca's men tried to flank her. Valentina moved instinctively, striking him down with the butt of her pistol. Pain flared again. Her body screamed at her to stop. She ignored it. DeLuca advanced, confident. "You can't win tonight, Queen." Valentina smiled, blooded, exhausted, but unwavering. "I already have." With a sudden, explosive burst of movement, she lunged forward, firing, dodging, and striking with ruthless precision. DeLuca stumbled, and Valentina closed the distance between them. Her hand went to the baby's blanket, touching the tiny head through Elena's grip. "Not her," she whispered. "Not mine." DeLuca tried to draw a knife. Valentina moved faster, knocking him back and pinning him against a crate. "You underestimated me," she said quietly. "I've survived worse. I've built an empire. I am the mother of the heir of the Morettis. And I will protect her at all costs." Elena stepped closer, gun aimed at the remaining men. The baby cooed softly, oblivious to the storm of violence around her. With one final, precise movement, Valentina disarmed DeLuca completely. He fell to his knees, exhausted, defeated, and terrified for the first time in years. "Stay down," Valentina said, pressing the barrel of her gun against his chest. "Or the next mistake will be your last." DeLuca's eyes met hers. He saw the fire of a mother, who would destroy anything to protect her child. The warehouse doors burst open, as Moretti reinforcements poured in. DeLuca's men scattered, realizing the battle was lost. Valentina lowered her gun slightly, her chest heaving. She looked at Elena, who smiled weakly, holding their daughter tightly. "We did it," Elena said softly. Valentina's lips curved into a tired, victorious smile. "Yes. But this city, it still needs a queen." The Iron Queen stood, battered, exhausted, but undefeated. Her empire was safe, for now. And in her arms, the future of the Moretti legacy slept peacefully. Outside, the storm began to subside. The city had witnessed the birth of a legend, a mother, a queen, and a survivor. The warehouse was quiet now. Smoke curled in the corners, mingling with the faint scent of blood and gunpowder. Valentina Moretti sat on a crate, her legs stretched out, the baby cradled safely in Elena's arms. Her hands shook slightly, not from fear, but from exhaustion. Every muscle ached. Every breath still burned in her lungs. Elena gently brushed a damp strand of hair from Valentina's forehead. "You need rest," she said softly. Valentina shook her head. "There's no time for rest." Elena frowned. "The baby is safe, the men are gone, let me breathe for a second, Queen." Valentina's lips curved into a tired smile. "Fine. But soon, we move. DeLuca isn't finished." Across the city, the news traveled fast. Moretti soldiers hunted down remaining pockets of DeLuca's men. His empire, once sprawling and feared, began to crumble under the relentless assault of the Queen's vengeance. At a hidden safe house, DeLuca sat alone, counting losses. His top lieutenants were either dead, captured, or in retreat. Sweat beaded on his forehead as the full weight of defeat settled over him. "Valentina Moretti," he muttered under his breath. "You survived everything, and now." He clenched his fists. "This isn't over." Back at the warehouse, Valentina stood and walked toward Elena, who handed the baby to her. The little one stirred and cooed, oblivious to the storm outside. Valentina kissed her forehead. "You're the strongest part of me," she whispered. Elena's eyes softened. "We make it through, all of us. Together." Valentina's gaze hardened. She was exhausted, but a new fire burned in her eyes. She would not just survive, she would rebuild, reclaim, and rule. Later that night, in the shadows of the city, Sofia Moretti convened the remaining loyal soldiers. Maps, intelligence reports, and weapons littered the table. "She's alive," Sofia said. "Our queen survived, and DeLuca's empire is crumbling. Tonight, we strike. No mercy." Valentina entered the room, leaning lightly on Luca for support. Her presence silenced the room instantly. Even in fatigue, she radiated authority. "Tonight," she said slowly, letting each word hit the room, "we remind this city who rules it." DeLuca thought he could destroy the Moretti name. He was wrong. And now, it's time for revenge. Her soldiers cheered, a mix of relief and renewed fury. Elena stood behind her, keeping the baby close, but she could see the storm brewing in Valentina's eyes. The woman who had been kidnapped, threatened, and almost killed, was far from finished. The battle was over, for now. But the war for the city, for the empire, for the future of their family, had only just begun. Valentina looked down at her daughter, then at Elena. "DeLuca thought he could break us," she whispered. "He was wrong. And next time, he won't even get close." Outside, the rain had stopped. The streets glistened under the city lights, reflecting the calm before the storm. And in the quiet of the night, the Mafia Queen's revenge began. The city streets were quiet now, but that calm was deceiving. Valentina Moretti stepped onto the balcony of the Moretti mansion, the baby cradled safely in Elena's arms. Rain had passed, leaving the streets glistening like black glass under the moonlight. From this height, the city seemed peaceful, but she knew better. Her empire had survived DeLuca's attack, but survival was only the beginning. Now came the hard part: rebuilding, consolidating, and sending a message to anyone who dared challenge her. Sofia entered behind her, carrying reports from the field. "Boss, the gangs loyal to DeLuca are scattering. Our men have taken control of key territories. But there are still a few hotspots." Valentina nodded, her sharp eyes scanning the papers. "Good. Let them regroup. When they do, we'll crush them completely." Elena looked at Valentina from the side. "You're already planning their annihilation." Valentina smiled faintly, brushing a hand over her daughter's tiny head. "They tried to destroy us. They will regret ever thinking they could." Inside the mansion, the remaining Moretti lieutenants gathered in the grand war room. Maps were pinned to walls, and phones constantly rang with updates from the streets. Valentina entered, moving slowly, but with unmistakable authority. Even after labor, even after the kidnapping and near death, she carried herself like the Iron Queen. "Listen carefully," she said, her voice calm, but cutting through the room like a blade. "De Luca underestimated us. That will never happen again. From this night forward, anyone who even thinks of challenging the Moretti name will pay the price." "Understood." A chorus of "Yes, boss," filled the room. Valentina turned to Sofia. "I want a list of every gang, every crew, every soldier loyal to him. We take them one by one. Cleanly. Quickly. Mercilessly." Sofia nodded. "Already in progress." Elena stayed behind, holding the baby. She watched Valentina move among her soldiers with a deadly precision, issuing orders with clarity, confidence, and an unshakable will. "Do you ever rest?" Elena asked softly. Valentina turned to her, eyes softened for a moment. "Not yet. Not until the city knows who truly rules it." Outside, the streets were alive with Moretti soldiers taking back the city. Cars rolled through avenues, checking territories. Silent messages were sent. Names were whispered in fear. The Iron Queen was back, and stronger than ever. Back in the warehouse that De Luca had once considered his stronghold, his remaining men were running, hiding, or surrendering. His empire, once mighty and feared, was crumbling beneath the weight of Valentina's revenge. Valentina returned to Elena's side, taking the baby gently. She whispered, This is why we fight. Not for power alone, but for the family we protect. For the legacy we build." Elena smiled, finally seeing the softer side of the queen. "You've always been unstoppable, Valentina." Valentina's gaze hardened again. "Now they will see it too." And in the heart of the city, the message was already spreading: the Mafia queen had returned. She was a mother. She was a survivor. And she would not be challenged again. The night air in the abandoned dockyards was thick with tension. Fog clung to the water like a silent witness to what was about to unfold. Valentina Moretti's black coat fluttered behind her as she stepped off the car, baby safely swaddled in Elena's arms. Her soldiers fanned out around the perimeter, weapons ready. Every step she took radiated authority, power, and deadly precision. "Boss, are you sure about this?" Luca asked, glancing at the shadows. "He's desperate now." "Dangerous." Valentina's eyes narrowed. "Dangerous. I've faced worse. This is personal. He underestimated me once. Never again." Inside the dockyard warehouse, Marco De Luca waited, flanked by a handful of loyal men. His smirk faltered when he saw the coordinated force outside. "Valentina," he said, voice dripping with false confidence. "I expected you to hide, to lick your wounds. But here you are. With the baby." "Bold." Valentina stepped forward, ignoring the sting in her still recovering body from labor. "Bold? No. Calculated. You made one mistake. You thought I would ever be vulnerable." De Luca laughed, drawing a pistol. "Then let's end this tonight." Before he could fire, a deafening roar erupted. Moretti soldiers stormed the warehouse from all sides, cutting off every exit. Bullets flew, shattering crates, ricocheting off metal walls. De Luca's men faltered immediately, trapped by the Queen's forces. Valentina moved through the chaos like a shadow. Each movement was precise, every shot calculated. Her body ached, but her resolve burned hotter than ever. Luca covered her flank, taking down anyone who tried to approach. Elena stayed behind a barricade, holding the baby, protecting the future of the empire. DeLuca's eyes widened as he realized the situation was hopeless. You can't win, he shouted. Valentina stopped a few feet away, her gun trained on him. Watch me. One by one, his men were disarmed or incapacitated. DeLuca tried to flee, but Valentina's soldiers blocked every path. Cornered, he finally dropped to his knees, exhausted and defeated. Please, he whispered, fear finally replacing arrogance. Valentina approached slowly, her boots clicking against the concrete floor. You took everything from me, almost, she said softly. But I survived. My family survives. And you will pay for every life you destroyed. DeLuca's smirk was gone. He knew it. He was defeated, utterly. Valentina gestured to her soldiers. Tie him up. Take him far from here. Let him live, but remember, anyone who follows him will answer to me. As DeLuca was dragged away, Valentina exhaled deeply. She turned toward Elena, who handed the baby to her. You did it, Elena whispered. Valentina held her daughter close, smiling through exhaustion and pain. We did it. Together. The dockyard fell silent, the echoes of gunfire fading into the night. The war for the city was over. And in that silence, one truth was undeniable: Valentina Moretti was the undisputed queen. Her empire was secure. Her family was safe. And her legacy had begun. Elena stepped closer, holding her hand. You've earned this, all of it. Valentina kissed her forehead, the weight of the night lifting slightly. We earned this, together. And now, the city will know. Her eyes, dark and fierce, scanned the horizon. The Iron Queen reigns. The city had changed overnight. Valentina Moretti returned to the Moretti mansion, her newborn daughter sleeping peacefully in Elena's arms. The once chaotic streets now whispered her name with respect and fear. Inside the mansion, Sophia and the lieutenants were already waiting. Reports had poured in from the field. Rival gangs had either fled, surrendered, or pledged loyalty. Valentina surveyed the room, her gaze sharp and unyielding. Good. But loyalty, earned in fear alone, is fragile. We need stability, structure. Every corner of the city must know, this empire is ours. And it will remain ours. Sophia nodded. We've already started negotiations with the remaining families. Most are willing to submit rather than fight. Valentina smiled faintly. Good. Bring them here. I want every alliance formalized. Every territory mapped. Every soldier accounted for. Elena approached quietly, her voice soft. You're moving fast, even now. Valentina glanced at her, the sharpness in her eyes softening for a moment. Elena. I survived the ambush. I gave birth under fire. Nothing else will stop me now. Not city politics, not rivals, not even the memory of DeLuca. Elena smiled, brushing a strand of hair from the queen's face. You're unstoppable. Valentina turned back to the lieutenants. We also need to protect the family. The baby, she is the future. Every decision we make, every move we take, must ensure her safety. Sophia stepped forward. That's why we've secured several safe houses and new security protocols. Nobody, not a single enemy, will reach her. Valentina's eyes softened as she looked down at her daughter. She will inherit this empire one day. And she will do so safely, without ever knowing the fear I've faced. Her phone buzzed. Another report from the streets. A rival family had attempted a minor rebellion, unaware that Valentina's forces were already waiting. Within minutes, it was quelled. Valentina leaned back slightly, exhaustion tugging at her, but she refused to show weakness. "This is only the beginning," she said softly. "We rebuild, we strengthen, and we make sure no one ever thinks they can challenge us again." Elena held the baby close to Valentina. "And together?" Valentina nodded, her hand gently resting on Elena's arm. "Together. Always." By the next week, the city had transformed. The name Moretti carried weight in every alley, every street, every boardroom. Valentina personally met with every major player in the criminal underworld. Her presence alone silenced dissenters. Alliances were made, old grudges buried, and the city began to recognize the undisputed queen and mother of the heir. Late at night, Valentina walked the balcony of the mansion, her daughter sleeping peacefully in her arms. Elena joined her, resting a hand on her shoulder. "The city bends to you," Elena whispered. Valentina smiled faintly, her eyes scanning the horizon. "It does. But it's not just about power. It's about legacy. Protection. Family." Elena kissed her softly. "You've earned it all, Valentina." Valentina looked down at their daughter. "And this," she said, pressing a kiss to the baby's head, "this is everything." The city had finally learned a lesson it would never forget. The Iron Queen was back, stronger than ever, and her reign had only just begun. For the first time in weeks, the Moretti mansion was quiet. Sunlight poured through the tall windows, warming the marble floors. Valentina Moretti sat in the garden courtyard, her newborn daughter sleeping peacefully in her arms. Birds chirped in the trees, and the city beyond the mansion walls seemed calm. Too calm. Elena watched from the doorway, leaning against the frame with a small smile. "You look almost relaxed." Valentina glanced up. "Almost." Elena stepped closer and brushed her fingers over the baby's tiny hand. "She's perfect." Valentina's eyes softened. "She is." For a moment, the queen of the city was simply a mother. But peace never lasted long in their world. The sound of hurried footsteps broke the quiet. Sophia entered the courtyard, her expression tense. Valentina noticed immediately. "What happened?" she asked. Sophia handed her a tablet filled with reports. "We intercepted communications early this morning. A group is moving into the northern districts." Valentina frowned. "De Luca loyalists?" Sophia shook her head slowly. "No. Worse." She zoomed in on a symbol displayed in one of the intercepted photos, a black serpent wrapped around a dagger. Elena's face paled slightly. "The Serrano family," she whispered. Valentina's expression hardened. The Serrano cartel was not a small-time rival. They were powerful, ruthless, and known across several cities. Unlike De Luca, they didn't rush into battles blindly. They studied. They waited. And now they were here. "Why now?" Elena asked. Sophia answered quietly. "They think the empire is weak after everything that happened, the kidnapping, the birth, the war with De Luca." Valentina stood slowly, handing the baby gently to Elena. "Then they've made a mistake." Her voice was calm, but everyone in the courtyard felt the shift in the air. The Iron Queen had returned. Inside the war room, maps were already spread across the massive table. Moretti lieutenants gathered around as Valentina entered. "They've moved into 3 districts," Luca reported. "Quietly. Buying businesses, recruiting soldiers." Valentina studied the map. "They are not attacking yet," she said. "No," Sophia agreed. "They are positioning themselves." Valentina tapped the table lightly. "They want to see how we react." Elena entered behind them, holding the baby close. "Then what do we do?" she asked. Valentina looked around the room at her soldiers. We show them something they didn't expect. Luca leaned forward. And that is? Valentina's lips curved slightly. Strength. She pointed to the northern districts on the map. Double patrols. Secure every street. Make it clear the city belongs to the Moretti family. And the Serranos? Sophia asked. Valentina's eyes darkened. I'll deal with them personally. That night, black cars moved through the city streets again. Moretti soldiers re-established their presence, reminding everyone exactly who controlled the underworld. Word spread quickly. The Serranos had come expecting weakness. Instead, they found a city completely loyal to the Iron Queen. Late that night, Valentina stood on the balcony again, Elena beside her. The baby slept peacefully between them. Do you ever wish for a quiet life? Elena asked softly. Valentina looked down at her daughter. Sometimes. She then lifted her gaze to the glowing city skyline. But if I step away, someone worse will take my place. Elena squeezed her hand. So you stay? Valentina nodded. For her. Far across the city, inside a luxury penthouse, a man watched the same skyline. The leader of the Serrano family. He studied a photo of Valentina holding her newborn daughter. Then he smiled slowly. The queen has a weakness now, he said quietly. His lieutenant frowned. You mean the baby? The man nodded. Every empire falls eventually. He placed the photo on the table. Let's see how long hers lasts. Night settled over the city like a dark velvet curtain. Inside the Moretti mansion, security had never been tighter. Guards patrolled every hallway, cameras watched every corner, and the gates outside were reinforced with armed sentries. Yet Valentina Moretti knew one truth better than anyone. No fortress was impossible to breach. She sat in the nursery, gently rocking her newborn daughter in her arms. The soft glow of a lamp lit the room, casting warm shadows on the walls. Elena leaned against the doorway, watching them. You should sleep, Elena said softly. Valentina smirked slightly. Queens don't sleep much. Elena walked closer and kissed the baby's forehead. She has your eyes. Valentina looked down at the child. And hopefully your kindness. For a moment, the world felt peaceful. But across the city, something dark was already in motion. Inside a private penthouse overlooking the harbor, the Serrano family gathered around a sleek black table. Their leader, Adrian Serrano, studied a digital blueprint of the Moretti mansion projected in front of him. Security routes. Guard rotations. Camera blind spots. Everything had been carefully mapped. Impressive defenses, one lieutenant said. Adrian smiled slightly. Every defense has a weakness. He zoomed in on a specific area of the mansion. The nursery wing. Valentina Moretti is powerful, Adrian continued calmly. But she has something she never had before. A child, another man said. Adrian nodded. Exactly. He tapped the screen. That child is the future of the Moretti Empire. Without her, the queen becomes vulnerable. The room grew silent. Finally, one of the lieutenants asked carefully, You want us to assassinate the baby? Adrian shook his head slowly. No. His smile grew colder. We take her. The men exchanged uneasy glances. Kidnap the heir. Adrian leaned back in his chair. Imagine the chaos. The queen of the city brought to her knees, begging. He slid a photograph across the table. Valentina holding her newborn daughter. Break the mother, he said quietly. And the empire collapses. Back at the mansion, Valentina suddenly paused while rocking the baby. Elena noticed immediately. What is it? Valentina's instincts, the same instincts that had kept her alive through years of violence and betrayal, were whispering something. Danger. I don't know, she said slowly. But something feels wrong. Elena frowned. You think the Serranos are moving? Valentina stood and gently placed the baby in the crib. They are watching us. Studying us. She turned toward the door. Sophia. Within minutes, Sophia entered the nursery. Yes, boss. Valentina's voice was firm. I want every guard doubled tonight. No one enters or leaves the mansion without clearance. Sophia nodded immediately. Done. But far beyond the mansion walls, the Serrano family had already begun their plan. A black van rolled slowly through the streets several blocks away. Inside, 4 armed men studied the same blueprints Adrian Serrano had shown earlier. Remember, their leader said quietly. No mistakes. He pointed to the nursery location. We go in fast, silent, and we take the baby. One of the men hesitated. You really think we can get past Moretti security? The leader smiled coldly. They won't see us coming. Back at the mansion, Elena returned to the nursery. Valentina stood beside the crib, watching their daughter sleep. You're worried, Elena said. Valentina nodded. I've fought wars, Elena. I know when something is coming. Elena wrapped an arm around her waist. Whatever happens, we face it together. Valentina kissed her gently. Always. Outside the mansion gates, the black van slowed to a stop. Its engine turned off. 4 shadows stepped out into the darkness. Inside the nursery, the baby stirred softly in her sleep. And somewhere in the night, the kidnapping plot had begun. The Moretti mansion stood silent under the midnight sky. Tall iron gates guarded the estate, security lights illuminating the massive stone walls. Armed guards patrolled the perimeter while cameras scanned every inch of the grounds. From the outside, it looked impossible to breach. But the Serrano family had planned carefully. A black van sat parked several streets away. Inside, 4 men checked their weapons one final time. 2 minutes, their leader said quietly. One of the men adjusted a small device in his hand. Signal jammer ready. Another pulled down a black mask. We grab the baby and leave. No unnecessary bloodshed. The leader smirked slightly. This is the Moretti mansion. There will be blood. Inside the mansion, most of the lights were dim. Valentina Moretti walked slowly down the hallway toward the nursery. Her body was still recovering from childbirth, but her mind refused to rest. Something still felt wrong. She opened the nursery door quietly. Their daughter slept peacefully in the crib. Elena sat in a chair beside her, reading softly. You're still awake, Elena whispered. Valentina nodded. I told Sophia to double the guards tonight. Elena smiled. Paranoid queen. Valentina looked at the baby. Protective mother. They shared a quiet moment as the baby stirred slightly before falling back asleep. But outside, the Serrano team had already moved. The mansion's outer cameras flickered. The signal jammer activated. In seconds, several cameras went dark. The intruders scaled the wall silently using grappling lines. Their boots landed softly on the grass as they moved like shadows through the garden. One guard turned the corner of the walkway. He barely had time to react before one of the men knocked him unconscious. Path clear, the leader whispered. They moved quickly toward the mansion's side entrance. A lockpick tool clicked. The door opened. Inside, alarms should have triggered. But the jammer kept the signal blocked. They slipped into the mansion like ghosts. Upstairs, Sophia sat in the security room reviewing patrol reports. Suddenly one of the monitors flickered. Her eyes narrowed. That's strange. Another screen went dark. Then another. Her heart skipped. She grabbed the radio immediately. All units check in now. Silence answered. Sophia stood up instantly. Boss. In the nursery, Valentina felt it again. That instinct. Danger. She turned toward Elena. Did you hear something? Elena shook her head. No. Then suddenly, a distant thud echoed from the hallway. Valentina's eyes sharpened instantly. She grabbed the pistol hidden inside the nursery drawer. Elena, she whispered firmly. Take the baby. Elena stood, lifting the sleeping child carefully. What's happening? Valentina moved toward the nursery door. Someone's inside the mansion. Downstairs, the Serrano team moved quickly through the dark halls. One of them checked the blueprint. Nursery is upstairs. Left corridor. Footsteps echoed softly as they climbed the staircase. Then, a voice spoke from the darkness. You picked the wrong house. The men froze. Valentina Moretti stood at the top of the stairs, pistol aimed steadily at them. Her expression was calm. Deadly. You're not leaving here with my daughter. The leader slowly raised his gun. Sorry, Queen. Gunfire exploded through the hallway. Valentina fired first. The first attacker dropped instantly. The others scattered, bullets ripping into the walls as chaos erupted inside the mansion. Guards began rushing toward the noise. Sophia's voice echoed through the radio. Intruders. Lock down the house. Upstairs, Elena hid in the nursery closet with the baby, her heart racing. Outside, Moretti soldiers stormed the mansion grounds. Inside, Valentina fought like something unstoppable. Not just a queen. Not just a mafia boss. A mother protecting her child. Another attacker rushed toward her. Valentina struck him with the pistol and fired again. The hallway filled with smoke and shattered wood. Within seconds, the remaining intruders realized the mission had failed. Retreat, one shouted. They fled down the stairs, just as Moretti guards burst through the front doors. 2 attackers were captured. One escaped into the night. Valentina lowered her weapon slowly as silence returned. Her chest rose and fell with heavy breaths. Then she rushed into the nursery. Elena. The closet door opened. Elena stepped out holding the baby tightly. We're okay. Valentina pulled them both into her arms. For the first time that night, the Iron Queen allowed herself to breathe. But downstairs, Sophia was already interrogating the captured attackers. And the name they revealed would change everything. Serrano. The war wasn't over. It had just begun. The mansion was silent. But it was not the peaceful silence of rest. It was the silence before a storm. Valentina Moretti stood in the war room, staring down at the city map spread across the massive oak table. The soft glow of the overhead lights illuminated red markings across several districts, Serrano territory. Behind her, Sophia, Luca, and the rest of the Moretti lieutenants waited quietly. No one spoke. Everyone in the room understood one thing. The Serranos had made the worst mistake of their lives. They had tried to take the Queen's child. Valentina slowly placed both hands on the table. Her voice was calm. Too calm. They came into my home, she said quietly. No one moved. They walked through my halls, pointed guns at my guards, and tried to steal my daughter. Her fingers curled slowly into fists. I gave DeLuca mercy, she continued. I gave this city stability. She looked up at the room. But the Serranos want war. Her dark eyes hardened. So we will give them war. A ripple of energy passed through the room. Luca leaned forward. What are your orders, boss? Valentina pointed to the northern districts on the map. They have 3 operations in the city. She tapped the first mark. Casino. Second mark. Warehouse. Third. Dockyard shipment. Her voice dropped. By sunrise, they are all gone. Sophia's lips curved slightly. Simultaneous strikes. Valentina nodded. Fast. Clean. No survivors among leadership. One of the lieutenants hesitated. Boss, the Serrano cartel is massive. If we hit them like this. Valentina cut him off with a cold look. They came for my child. The man immediately fell silent. There will be consequences. Upstairs, Elena sat in the nursery rocking chair with the baby resting against her chest. The little girl slept peacefully, unaware that an entire criminal empire was about to erupt into violence for her. Elena gently stroked her tiny hand. You caused quite the war, little one, she whispered softly. The nursery door opened quietly. Valentina stepped inside. Her expression softened the moment she saw them. Elena noticed the change immediately. You've decided something, Elena said. Valentina sat beside her. Yes. Elena already knew. You're going after them. Valentina nodded slowly. They crossed a line no one crosses. Elena looked down at the baby. She needs you alive. Valentina placed a gentle hand on her daughter's head. And that's exactly why I'm doing this. She leaned closer and kissed Elena softly. I won't let anyone threaten our family again. Across the city, inside a luxury penthouse, Adrian Serrano poured himself a glass of whiskey. His lieutenant entered the room. Our men report the Moretti mansion is on high alert. Adrian smirked. Of course it is. The Queen is angry. Should we expect retaliation? Adrian took a slow sip. She just gave birth. Her body is weak. Her empire barely recovered from DeLuca. He placed the glass down. She won't risk a war. At that exact moment. Across the city, 3 black Moretti convoys began moving through the streets. Inside one of the cars, Sophia checked her weapon. Luca drove another convoy toward the docks. And Valentina herself sat silently in the lead vehicle heading toward the Serrano casino. Her soldiers glanced at her with quiet awe. A woman who had given birth only days earlier. And yet she was about to lead a war. The convoy stopped outside the glowing Serrano casino. Valentina stepped out of the car slowly. Rain began to fall lightly from the sky. Her long coat moved with the wind as she looked up at the building. Ready? Luca asked. Valentina's eyes were cold steel. Begin. Seconds later. Explosions rocked the casino entrance. Moretti soldiers stormed inside. Gunfire erupted instantly. Across the city, the warehouse exploded into flames. At the docks, Serrano shipments burned in massive fireballs. The war had begun. Back in the penthouse, Adrian Serrano's phone began ringing non-stop. He answered one call. Then another. His confident expression slowly faded. Sir, the casino has been attacked. Another voice. The warehouse is gone. Another. The docks are burning. Adrian's hand tightened around the phone. Then he whispered one word. Valentina. Back at the casino, the battle was already over. Serrano guards lay defeated across the marble floor. Valentina walked through the wreckage calmly. One of the captured men looked up at her in terror. You just started a war." Valentina knelt slightly, so he could see her face clearly. "No," she said quietly. "You did, when you tried to take my daughter." She stood and walked away. Behind her, flames reflected in the shattered glass walls of the casino. Across the city, everyone in the underworld received the same message. The Iron Queen was not a woman to threaten. And anyone who touched her family would burn. By dawn, the city was burning. Smoke rose from the Serrano casino. Flames still flickered at the dockyards where shipments had exploded hours earlier. Sirens echoed across the streets as police tried to understand the chaos that had erupted overnight. But everyone in the underworld already knew the truth. War had begun. Inside the Moretti mansion, the war room was alive with constant updates. Phones rang, radios crackled, and soldiers rushed in and out delivering reports. Sophia stood beside the giant city map, marking new developments with red pins. 3 Serrano operations destroyed, she said. But they are retaliating. Valentina stood at the table, her expression calm, despite the storm unfolding outside. "How?" she asked. Luca entered quickly, wiping blood from his sleeve. "They hit 2 of our clubs downtown," he said. "Drive-by attacks. One of our warehouses too." Valentina nodded slowly. "They are testing our defenses." Elena stepped into the room quietly, the baby asleep in her arms. "You started something big last night," she said gently. Valentina looked at her daughter. "No," she replied quietly. "They did." Outside the mansion gates, security had doubled again. Armed guards stood watch everywhere. This war was no longer hidden in shadows. It was spilling into the streets. Across the city, the Serrano cartel had begun their counterattack. A Moretti nightclub erupted in gunfire as Serrano shooters burst through the front doors. Music stopped instantly as chaos spread among the crowd. Bullets shattered glass and ripped through walls. Within minutes, Moretti soldiers responded. The club became a battlefield. Back in the Serrano penthouse, Adrian Serrano stood by the window watching smoke rise in the distance. His lieutenant rushed into the room. "She hit us harder than expected." Adrian's jaw tightened. "She attacked 3 operations in one night." "Yes, sir." Another phone rang. "More bad news. The docks are completely destroyed." Adrian slammed the phone onto the table. "That woman just declared war on the Serrano cartel." The lieutenant hesitated. "What do we do?" Adrian turned slowly, anger burning in his eyes. "If Valentina Moretti wants a war." He picked up his jacket. "Then we will give her one." By afternoon, the city looked like a war zone. Gunfire echoed through back alleys. Explosions rattled abandoned warehouses. Both criminal empires were fighting for control of every street, every business, every corner. The underworld had split in 2. Moretti or Serrano. There was no neutral ground. Inside the Moretti mansion, Valentina finally sat down for the first time that day. Her body still felt the exhaustion of childbirth, but she refused to show weakness. Sophia approached with another update. "They are moving into the Eastern District." Valentina studied the map. "That's our territory." "Not anymore," Sophia said. Valentina stood again immediately. "Then we take it back." Elena watched her carefully. "You're pushing yourself too hard." Valentina shook her head. "If I slow down now, Serrano wins." Elena stepped closer. And if something happens to you? Valentina looked at the baby sleeping peacefully in Elena's arms. That's exactly why I can't lose. That night, Moretti forces pushed back into the Eastern District. Street by street. Block by block. Gunfights erupted under flickering streetlights. Cars burned in the middle of intersections. Sirens screamed in the distance. For the first time in years, the city's criminal underworld had erupted into full-scale war. And at the center of it all stood a woman who had become something more than just a mafia boss. Valentina Moretti had become a symbol. A mother who would burn the world to protect her child. Late that night, Valentina returned to the nursery. Elena was asleep in the chair, the baby resting against her chest. Valentina knelt beside them quietly. For a moment, the war outside faded away. She gently touched her daughter's tiny hand. "You're worth everything," she whispered. But somewhere across the city, Adrian Serrano was already planning his next move. And this time, he wouldn't be attacking businesses. He would be attacking the Queen's heart. The war had entered its second week. The city had never seen violence like this before. Businesses were closing early, streets emptied before midnight, and whispers about the war between the Moretti Empire and the Serrano cartel spread through every corner of the underworld. But for Valentina Moretti, the war was no longer just about territory. It was about family. Inside the Moretti mansion, security had become almost military level. Armed guards patrolled constantly, vehicles were searched at the gates, and the nursery wing had become the most protected place in the entire estate. Elena stood by the nursery window, holding their daughter close. The baby stirred softly before settling back into sleep. "You have no idea how dangerous the world is yet," Elena whispered gently. Behind her, Valentina leaned against the doorway. "I'm trying to keep it that way." Elena turned toward her with a small smile. "You should be resting." Valentina shook her head. "I can't rest while Serrano is still breathing." She stepped closer and kissed the baby's forehead. For a moment, the queen of the city looked like nothing more than a tired new mother. But the moment didn't last long. Sophia suddenly rushed into the room. "Boss." Valentina immediately recognized the urgency in her voice. "What happened?" Sophia held out a tablet. "Intel from one of our informants." Valentina read quickly. Her expression darkened. "They are planning something." Elena felt a chill run down her spine. "What kind of something?" Valentina looked up slowly. "You?" The room went silent. The war had entered its second week. Sophia spoke carefully. "Our informant overheard Serrano's men discussing a new strategy." Elena's heart began to race. "They are going to target me." Valentina nodded grimly. "They know they can't get to the baby now. Security is too strong." She stepped closer to Elena. "So they'll go after the person I love." Elena swallowed. "To break you?" Valentina's eyes hardened instantly. "They are wrong." But deep down, she knew the danger was real. Across the city, inside an underground parking structure, Serrano soldiers prepared for their next move. Adrian Serrano stood beside a sleek black car. "Valentina is strong," he told his men. "She survived DeLuca. She survived childbirth during war." One of his lieutenants nodded. "She's almost impossible to break." Adrian smiled slightly. "Everyone breaks." He placed a photograph on the hood of the car. Elena holding the baby outside the mansion garden. "Take her." The men exchanged glances. "And the baby?" one asked. Adrian shook his head. "No. Leave the child. He picked up the photograph again. When Valentina sees Elena in danger, she will come running. And then. Adrian's smile turned cold. Then the queen falls into our trap. Back at the mansion, Valentina was already giving orders. No one leaves the property without an escort, she said firmly. Sophia nodded. Done. Valentina turned to Elena. You stay inside the mansion. At all times. Elena crossed her arms slightly. I'm not helpless, you know. Valentina stepped closer, her voice softer. I know. She touched Elena's cheek gently. But if anything happened to you. Her voice trailed off. For the first time, Elena saw fear in Valentina's eyes. Not fear of enemies. Not fear of war. Fear of losing her. Elena wrapped her arms around Valentina. We'll get through this. Valentina held her tightly. I won't let them touch you. That night, Moretti soldiers doubled patrols around the mansion again. Searchlights swept across the gardens. Security vehicles circled the property. But the Serrano cartel was patient. They wouldn't strike at the fortress. They would wait for the one moment Elena stepped outside. And eventually, everyone leaves their fortress. Later that evening, Elena stepped onto the balcony for fresh air. Below her, guards stood watch. Inside the nursery, the baby slept peacefully. Valentina joined her a moment later. You shouldn't stand out here alone, Valentina said quietly. Elena smiled faintly. You're right behind me. Valentina wrapped an arm around her waist. Yes. Across the city, Adrian Serrano watched a live surveillance feed of the mansion from a laptop. His lieutenant leaned over his shoulder. That's her. Elena on the balcony. Adrian closed the laptop slowly. Good. His smile returned. Now we wait. The war had reached a breaking point. For 2 weeks, the streets had burned with violence. Businesses were destroyed, soldiers from both sides had fallen, and the underworld of the city had split into 2 clear forces. Moretti and Serrano. But Valentina Moretti knew something Adrian Serrano did not. War could not continue forever. Sooner or later, someone had to end it. And she intended to end it her way. Inside the Moretti mansion war room, the air was thick with tension. Maps of the city covered the walls, each district marked with red and black pins. Sophia stood beside the table. Our scouts confirmed Serrano's main leadership is gathering tonight. Valentina looked up slowly. Where? Luca zoomed in on a satellite image. An abandoned steel factory on the south side of the city. Valentina studied the location carefully. Adrian Serrano was gathering his commanders in one place. It was exactly what she had been waiting for. How many? She asked. 30, maybe 40 soldiers, Luca said. Sophia crossed her arms. It's a trap. Valentina nodded calmly. Yes. Sophia frowned. You're still going? Valentina's eyes hardened. Of course. She placed both hands on the table. This war ends tonight. Upstairs in the nursery, Elena rocked their daughter slowly in the dim light. The baby yawned and curled her tiny fingers around Elena's hand. You picked a dramatic time to enter the world, Elena whispered softly. Valentina stepped into the room quietly. Elena looked up immediately. You're leaving. It wasn't a question. Valentina nodded. Serrano is gathering his men. Elena's voice tightened. That sounds like a trap. It is. Then don't go. Valentina walked closer and gently touched their daughter's head. If I don't go, this war never ends. Elena looked at her with worry. You're still recovering. Valentina smiled faintly. I've survived worse. Elena stood and pulled her into a tight embrace. Come back to us. Valentina kissed her softly. I always do. Across the city, the abandoned steel factory stood silent under the moonlight. Rust covered the massive metal structures. Broken windows rattled in the wind. Inside, Adrian Serrano stood at the center of the building surrounded by his lieutenants. This is the moment, he said. Valentina will come for us tonight. One of his men nodded. And when she does? Adrian's smile was cold. We close the trap. Hidden snipers positioned themselves on the upper catwalks. Dozens of armed soldiers spread across the factory floor. Every entrance was covered. Adrian checked his watch. The Queen is coming. Outside the factory, black SUVs rolled silently through the darkness. Valentina sat in the front vehicle beside Sofia. Behind them, Moretti soldiers prepared their weapons. Luca checked his radio. All teams in position. Valentina stared at the looming factory ahead. Remember, she said calmly. We don't stop until Serrano is finished. The cars stopped. Doors opened. Moretti soldiers spread out into the shadows. The final battle had begun. Inside the factory, Adrian Serrano heard footsteps echo across the concrete floor. He smiled. Right on time. Valentina Moretti stepped into the massive building, her soldiers surrounding her. The two leaders faced each other across the dark factory floor. Adrian clapped slowly. Impressive. Valentina's voice was calm. You tried to kidnap my child. Adrian shrugged. Strategic move. Valentina raised her gun slightly. You made a mistake. Adrian smiled wider. No, Valentina. Suddenly dozens of Serrano soldiers appeared from the shadows above. Snipers aimed from the catwalks. Guns surrounded the Moretti team. You walked into my trap. For a moment, silence filled the massive factory. Then Valentina smirked. You think this is your trap? She pressed a small button on a device in her hand. Outside the factory, hundreds of headlights suddenly illuminated the entire building. Dozens of Moretti vehicles surrounded the complex. Snipers appeared on nearby rooftops. Serrano soldiers froze. Adrian's smile disappeared. Valentina's voice echoed through the factory. No, Serrano. She aimed her weapon directly at him. This is mine. Gunfire exploded across the building. The final battle for the city had begun. 3 Serrano gunmen charged toward Valentina's position. She stepped out from cover with deadly precision. 2 quick shots. 2 men fell instantly. The third raised his weapon, but Sofia tackled him before he could fire, knocking him to the ground. The fight was brutal and fast. Within minutes, the Moretti soldiers began taking control of the upper catwalks. Serrano snipers were forced back as the balance of power shifted. Adrian realized the truth. He was losing. His lieutenant grabbed his arm. Boss, we need to leave. But Adrian Serrano's pride wouldn't allow it. He pushed the man away. No. Across the smoky factory floor, Valentina stepped forward slowly through the chaos. Their eyes met. The battle around them seemed to fade for a moment as the two leaders faced each other. Adrian raised his gun. You should have stayed home with your baby, he said coldly. Valentina didn't flinch. You should have stayed out of my city. They fired almost simultaneously. Both shots missed as sparks flew from a metal beam between them. The two began circling slowly through the wreckage. Adrian's voice was low and furious. You started a war you can't win. Valentina's eyes burned with calm determination. You tried to take my child. Another gunshot echoed. Adrian's weapon clicked empty. Before he could react, Valentina kicked the gun from his hand. It skidded across the concrete floor. Adrian lunged forward, tackling her. They crashed into the ground as the fight turned physical. Despite the exhaustion still lingering in her body from childbirth, Valentina fought with fierce determination. Adrian swung wildly. She blocked the strike and drove her elbow into his ribs. He staggered back. Valentina grabbed a metal pipe from the floor and struck his arm, forcing him to drop a hidden knife. Adrian collapsed to one knee, breathing heavily. The gunfire across the factory had slowed. Moretti soldiers now surrounded the area. The war was almost over. Adrian looked up at her with hatred. You think this ends tonight? Valentina pointed her gun at him. It already did. He laughed weakly. Kill me, and another cartel will come. Valentina stepped closer. Maybe. She lowered the weapon slightly. But they'll remember what happened to the last one. Adrian's expression finally changed. For the first time. Fear. Valentina gestured to her soldiers. Take him. Two Moretti guards grabbed Adrian and forced him to his feet. The remaining Serrano soldiers slowly dropped their weapons. The factory fell silent. The war was over. Sofia walked over to Valentina, breathing heavily. You did it. Valentina looked around the massive building, now filled with captured enemies and victorious soldiers. No, she said quietly. We did. Later that night, Valentina returned to the mansion. The war room was finally quiet. She walked upstairs slowly and opened the nursery door. Elena sat in the rocking chair holding their sleeping daughter. The moment Elena saw her, relief flooded her face. You're alive. Valentina smiled faintly. Of course. Elena stood and hugged her tightly. The baby stirred softly between them. Valentina looked down at her daughter. It's over, she whispered. For the first time in weeks, the city was finally at peace. 5 years later. The city looked different now. The chaos of the war had faded into memory. Businesses had reopened, the streets were calmer, and the criminal underworld had settled into a quiet balance under one undeniable truth. Valentina Moretti ruled it all. The Moretti mansion stood stronger than ever, its walls no longer just a fortress of power, but also a home. In the large garden behind the mansion, a little girl ran through the grass laughing. Her dark hair bounced as she chased a butterfly, her tiny shoes tapping quickly along the stone path. Elena. Look, she shouted. Elena stood near the garden table smiling. I see it, sweetheart. The little girl giggled as the butterfly flew away. Mama will catch it for me. Elena laughed softly. I think Mama is busy. Across the garden, Valentina Moretti sat at a table reviewing documents from her lieutenants. Even after 5 years, the empire required constant attention. But her attention quickly shifted when she heard small footsteps running toward her. Mama. Valentina looked up just as her daughter leapt into her arms. She caught her easily, smiling warmly. What happened? The butterfly escaped. Valentina raised an eyebrow playfully. That sounds like a serious crime. The little girl nodded dramatically. We must catch it. Elena walked over, shaking her head with a smile. You two are impossible. Valentina stood, holding her daughter comfortably. The once feared Iron Queen now carried herself with a calm confidence, still powerful, still respected, but no longer constantly at war. The city had learned its lesson. No one challenged the Moretti Empire anymore. And those who had, were long gone. Their daughter looked up at Valentina with wide, curious eyes. Mama? Yes? When I grow up, can I run the city like you? Elena sighed softly. Valentina chuckled. That's a big responsibility. The little girl crossed her arms stubbornly. I'm strong. Valentina knelt slightly so they were eye to eye. Yes, she said gently. You are. Elena sat beside them. But hopefully, Elena added, the city won't need another war by then. Valentina glanced at her and smiled. Hopefully. The little girl grabbed both of their hands. Come play. Valentina looked toward the mansion, where Sofia and Luca stood watching from the balcony. They nodded respectfully. Even after all these years, loyalty to the queen remained absolute. But in this moment, Valentina wasn't thinking about power, or enemies, or territory. She was thinking about her family. She stood and followed her daughter into the garden. The little girl ran ahead laughing as the warm sun filled the courtyard. Elena slipped her hand into Valentina's. You built something incredible, Elena said softly. Valentina looked at their daughter running freely across the grass. Yes. Her voice was calm and certain. But this. She gestured toward the child. This is the real legacy. Elena leaned her head gently against Valentina's shoulder. The Iron Queen had fought wars, defeated enemies, and built an empire. But the greatest victory of her life wasn't power. It was the family she protected. As the sun slowly set over the city skyline, the little girl's laughter echoed across the garden. And somewhere in the distance, the city continued to move under the quiet rule of the woman everyone feared. And the mother her daughter adored.